The crowd roared like thunder across the massive arena. Alien voices mixed together in a sound that shook the metal walls. Admiral Kang Wubin stood in the center of the fighting ring, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto the sandy floor below. His opponent lay unconscious nearby. The creature was twice his size with 4 arms and skin like stone, but it had not been enough. Human speed and smart fighting had won the day. Kang rolled his shoulders and felt the ache in his muscles. The fight had been harder than he wanted to admit. Around the arena, thousands of different alien species watched from their seats. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales or fur or metal parts attached to their bodies. All of them stared at the human who had just beaten their champion. Emperor Vextar approached from the royal viewing box. The insect-like ruler was 3 meters tall with black shiny skin and compound eyes that reflected the arena lights. His 4 legs clicked against the floor as he walked. Behind him came a team of handlers dragging heavy chains. "Human," the Emperor spoke in broken standard language, his voice like grinding metal. "Your species fights with more strength than we expected. As we promised, the winner gets to choose a prize from our collection." Kang wiped the sweat from his eyes and nodded. He had entered this tournament for one reason: the human colonial fleet needed better relations with the Dominion. Winning here would open doors for trade and peace talks. He just had to pick the right prize. The handlers pulled something massive from the shadows behind the throne. Chains as thick as tree trunks, strained against whatever they held. The crowd fell silent as the creature emerged into the arena lights. It was a dragon. Not like the dragons from old Earth stories, but something real and alien and ancient. Its scales were dark blue-black, each one the size of a dinner plate. They caught the light and threw it back in strange patterns. The creature's head was as long as a transport ship, with intelligent eyes that burned like small stars. But something was wrong. The dragon moved slowly, its great head hanging low. Its eyes looked tired and sad. The magnificent beast seemed to have given up on everything. "This is the last void dragon from the Kepler system," Emperor Vextar announced to the crowd. "It has been in our collection for 300 years. Once these creatures ruled the empty spaces between stars. Now there is only this one left." The Emperor's compound eyes focused on Kang. "It grows weaker every year. Soon it will die and we will have one less relic from the old times. Perhaps your people would enjoy having such a conversation piece in your museums." Kang stared at the dragon. While the alien saw only an old and dying animal, he saw something different. Those burning eyes held intelligence. They held loneliness. And deep inside, he thought he saw a tiny spark of hope. The dragon's massive head turned toward him. For a moment, their eyes met across the arena floor. In that instant, Kang felt something pass between them, a connection he could not explain. The dragon was not just an animal. It was a person, trapped and alone for 3 centuries. "I accept this prize," Kang said quietly. The crowd cheered. They thought the human had been fooled into taking a useless old creature instead of gold or weapons or technology. They did not understand what Kang had seen in those ancient eyes. Later that day, Kang walked through the Dominion shipyards with his transport orders. The dragon would be loaded onto his ship and sent to the human colony of New Jeju. He wondered what he would do with such a massive creature. His small colony barely had the resources to feed their human population. In the depths of the shipyard, mechanic Lee Dong-yun was doing his final check of the salvage hold. The older man had a cybernetic arm that gleamed in the dim light. Scars covered half his face from an old war injury. He moved between the piles of scrap metal with practiced ease. That was when he found it. Hidden under tarps and marked as scrap metal was a war mech. But not just any mech. Dong-hyun's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the design. It was a Paladin-class assault mech from the Titan Wars. 12 meters tall, armed with enough firepower to level a city block. All Paladins were supposed to have been destroyed after the peace treaty 20 years ago. The Dominion had insisted on it as part of the agreement to end the war. Apparently, someone had missed this one. Dong-Yun ran his good hand over the scarred armor. The paint was Dominion colors now, but underneath he could see the original human markings. HTX 7749, the serial number read. He had piloted one of these during the war before shrapnel took his arm and put him behind a repair desk instead of in a cockpit. The muscle memory was still there. His fingers found the hidden access panel without thinking. The cockpit opened, with a soft hiss, revealing controls that looked like old friends. Everything was still there, the neural interface, the weapon systems, even the life support looked functional. This mech could still fight. More than that, in the right hands, it could be devastating. The Paladins had been humanity's answer to Dominion superiority. One pilot in a Paladin could take on a dozen enemy fighters and win. Dong-Yun heard footsteps approaching. Admiral Kang's transport team was coming to collect their cargo. The mechanic made a decision that would change everything. "Admiral," he called out as Kang appeared around a pile of scrap metal. "I think your prize came with a bonus." Kang looked at the massive war machine and his eyes went wide. He knew what he was looking at. Every human military officer knew the legends of the Paladins. "Is it functional?" "More than functional." Dong-Yun grinned, his scarred face lighting up. "She's been waiting 20 years for the right pilot. I think your dragon might like having a friend." As they arranged to ship both the dragon and the hidden mech to New Jeju, neither man understood what they had truly found. They thought they were saving relics from the past. They did not know they were about to forge the future. 3. Days later, Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of his transport ship and watched New Jeju grow larger in the view screen. The small colony world looked peaceful from space. Green continents and blue oceans under white clouds. It looked like the kind of place where a tired old dragon might find some peace. In the cargo hold below, the void dragon lay curled around, the concealed war mech. The creature had not eaten since leaving Dominion space, but its eyes seemed a little brighter, as if it could sense that something was about to change. The dragon's massive head rested against the mech's armored chest. Ancient scales touched human steel. Neither moved, but somehow they seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for the right moment to discover what they could become together. On the colony below, Dr. Park Min-hee prepared her xenobiology lab for an unusual new resident. She had no idea that she was about to help create something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would make the stars themselves tremble. The transport ship entered the atmosphere and began its descent toward New Jeju spaceport. In the cargo hold, dragon scales began to hum with the faintest vibration. The war mech's power core flickered to life for just a moment before going dark again. Neither Admiral Kang nor mechanic Dong-Yun noticed these small signs. They were too busy planning where to house their unusual prizes. But if they had been, watching more carefully, they might have seen the dragon's eyes brighten with something that had been missing for 300 years. Hope. The ship touched down on New Jeju with barely a bump. Cargo doors opened and loading crews prepared to move their unusual cargo. None of them knew that they were about to witness the beginning of a legend. The dragon was no longer just a relic. The mech was no longer just retired. Together, they were about to become something that would tear open the sky itself, but that would come later. For now, there was only an old dragon and a forgotten war machine, brought together by chance on a small colony world at the edge of human space. Sometimes the smallest moments create the greatest changes. Sometimes a prize that looks worthless turns out to be priceless. And sometimes, when the galaxy seems darkest, hope arrives in the most unexpected forms. The real story was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Admiral Kang brought his unusual prizes to New Jeju. The colony's main hangar had been cleared and converted into something that looked more like a laboratory than a storage facility. Cables and scanning equipment filled every corner. The air hummed with the sound of computers working day and night. At the center of it all lay Baeko. That was the name Kang had given the dragon, after the white tiger from old Korean stories. The massive creature had grown used to his new home, though he still moved slowly and spent most days sleeping. But Kang had noticed changes. Small ones, at first. The dragon's scales seemed to shimmer with their own light sometimes. When the colony's power grid flickered during storms, the lights in the hangar stayed steady. It was as if the dragon was somehow feeding energy into the building. Dr. Park Min-hee ran her scanner over Baeko's massive form for what felt like the 1,000th time. She was the colony's best scientist, specializing in alien life forms. But this dragon was unlike anything in her textbooks. "The readings are impossible," she told Admiral Kang as they stood beside the sleeping giant. "His cellular structure is not just organic. There are crystalline elements woven throughout his entire body. His scales are resonating with quantum frequencies that should not exist in nature." Kang knelt and placed his hand on one of the dinner plate-sized scales. It was warm to the touch and vibrated slightly, like a guitar string that had just been plucked. "What does that mean, Doctor?" "It means your dragon is much more than he appears to be. These quantum patterns suggest he can manipulate energy at the subatomic level. If I am reading this correctly, he might be able to affect the fundamental forces of physics itself." A gruff voice interrupted their conversation. "Well, that explains a few things." They turned to see Lee Dong-hyun wheeling a large crate into the hangar. The mechanic's cybernetic arm gleamed as he began unpacking components that clearly belonged to the hidden war mech. Pieces of armor plating, weapon systems, and complex electronics filled the floor around him. "Dong-hyun, what are you doing?" Kang asked. The older man's scarred face broke into a wide grin. "Admiral, I have been studying this beauty for weeks. The Paladin mech I found is not just any old war machine. She is HTX 7749, one of the prototype units from the late war period. Her systems are more advanced than anything the Dominion has ever seen." He gestured toward the dragon. "And your friend here has been giving off energy readings that make my instruments go crazy. So I started thinking, what would happen if we combined them?" Dr. Park looked alarmed. "That could be extremely dangerous. We do not understand how the dragon's biology works. Integrating alien organic material with human technology could cause unpredictable reactions." But Kang was already studying the mech components with growing interest. During the war, he had heard rumors about experimental programs that tried to create hybrid systems, biological computers that could think faster than any artificial intelligence, organic power sources that never ran out of energy. None of them had ever worked. "Show me," he said simply. Over the following weeks, the three humans worked together on something that should have been impossible. Dong-hyun carefully removed scales from areas where Baeko was shedding naturally. The dragon seemed to understand what they were doing and did not resist. If anything, he appeared curious about their work. Dr. Park analyzed each scale with every instrument at her disposal. What she found defied everything she knew about physics. The scales were not just crystalline, they were quantum crystalline. They existed in multiple states simultaneously until observed or measured. They could store vast amounts of energy and release it in precise, controlled bursts. Most remarkably, they seemed to respond to conscious thought. When Park concentrated on a scale while holding it, the quantum patterns shifted. When she thought about power, it glowed brighter. When she thought about movement, it vibrated at different frequencies. Dong-hyun began the delicate process of integrating dragon scales into the mech's power core. He had to redesign entire systems to accommodate the organic components, Traditional circuits were replaced with hybrid pathways that combined metal wiring with living crystal. The mech's computer systems were expanded to include bio-neural processors that could think in ways no human programmer had ever imagined. The first test was small. They activated just the power core with a single dragon scale integrated into the system. The energy output immediately jumped to 300% of normal levels. The mech's systems began operating at efficiency ratings that broke several laws of thermodynamics. "This should not be possible," Dr. Park whispered as she watched the readings on her instruments. "The power output is stable, but the energy is coming from nowhere. The scale is somehow drawing power directly from quantum fluctuations in empty space." But the real breakthrough came when they installed the neural interface system. The Paladin, mechs had always used direct brain-to-machine links to allow pilots to control their systems with thought alone, but this new hybrid version was different. The dragon scales had been woven throughout the entire neural network. When Admiral Kang first put on the interface helmet, he expected to feel the familiar sensation of connecting to a machine. Instead, he felt something alive respond to his presence. The mech systems did not just activate, they awakened. And then Baco lifted his massive head and looked directly at him. The moment their eyes met while Kang was connected to the hybrid system, everything changed. A three-way link formed instantly. Human mind, machine intelligence, and dragon consciousness merged into something greater than the sum of its parts. Through the link, Kang felt Baco's memories flood through him. Visions of a time when void dragons ruled the spaces between stars. Images of technology so advanced it seemed like magic. The story of a proud species that chose exile rather than see the galaxy burn in endless war. For 3 centuries, Baco had waited in captivity. Not just waited, but hoped. Somehow, the ancient creature had known this moment would come. Had known that the right people would find him and help him become whole again. The dragon had not been captured during the old wars. He had surrendered voluntarily when his people chose to leave the galaxy rather than continue fighting. He had endured centuries of loneliness and boredom because he believed that someday someone would need what he could offer. That day had finally arrived. Standing in the neural link, Kang felt the mech respond to his thoughts with impossible precision. The 12-meter war machine moved like liquid mercury, flowing from one position to another with grace that no mechanical system should possess. Energy coursed through its frame in patterns that resembled a living nervous system, rather than electronic circuits. "By the ancestors," Dr. Park breathed as she watched the transformation. The mech was no longer just a machine. It was no longer just connected to a dragon. It had become something entirely new. Dong-Yun nodded slowly, understanding better than anyone what they had created. "Admiral, this is not just a mech anymore, and Baco is not just a dragon. Together, they are something the galaxy has never seen before." The hybrid entity they had forged combined human tactical thinking with dragon instincts about energy and space. Kang's military training provided strategy and precision. Baco contributed his species' natural understanding of quantum mechanics and dimensional manipulation. The Paladin mech gave them the physical framework to make their combined will manifest in reality. Together, they could do things that violated the known laws of physics. But their first real test was coming sooner than any of them expected. Long-range sensors had detected ships entering the new Jeju system. Ships with Dominion markings and hostile intent. Someone had noticed the unusual energy signatures coming from their small colony. Someone had decided to investigate. As alarms began to sound across the colony, Admiral Kang settled into the pilot's seat of his transformed mech. Through the neural link, he felt Baco's ancient power flowing through hybrid systems that hummed with barely contained energy. They were about to discover just how much the galaxy was going to change. The dragon was awake. The mech was alive. And together they were ready to show the Dominion what happened when you underestimated the power of unlikely partnerships. The real test was about to begin. The neural link between Admiral Kang, Baiko, and the hybrid mech was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was not just a connection between mind and machine, it was a sharing of souls across species and time. Through Baiko's ancient memories, Kang saw the true history of the galaxy. The Void Dragons had not been the monsters that Dominion propaganda described. They had been explorers and guardians, using their natural ability to manipulate quantum forces to keep peace between the stars. When the Dominion rose to power 3 centuries ago, the dragons faced an impossible choice. They could fight and watch billions die in endless war, or they could leave. As a species, they chose exile. They opened doorways to distant dimensions and vanished from known space. All except Baiko. The young dragon had volunteered to stay behind. Someone needed to remember. Someone needed to wait for the day when the galaxy would be ready for dragons to return. For 300 years, he had endured captivity and loneliness, keeping the old knowledge alive in his mind. Now, bonded with human determination and advanced technology, that knowledge was finally free. "Admiral!" Dr. Park's voice crackled through the communication system. "The Dominion ships are still 20 minutes out, but I am reading massive energy buildups. They are not coming to talk." Kang nodded, feeling the hybrid mech respond to his slightest thought. The machine moved with impossible grace, 12 meters of war technology flowing like water. Through the neural link, he could sense Baeko's quiet satisfaction. After centuries of being helpless, the dragon could finally act. "Dongyun, are all the colonists in the shelters?" Kang asked. The mechanic's voice came back immediately. "Everyone is underground, Admiral. The colony is as safe as we can make it. Now go show those Dominion bullies what happens when they pick on humans." The hybrid entity that the humans had begun calling Yong-Sin rose from the hangar like a metallic comet. The name meant dragon god in Old Korean, and watching the mech move, it seemed fitting. Energy wreathed its form in patterns that made space itself shimmer and bend. At 12 meters tall, Yong-Sin should have been insignificant against a fleet of warships, but the Dominion's sensors were already screaming warnings as they tried to measure the energy readings coming from the hybrid mech. Captain Zeklon of the heavy cruiser Dominance studied the readings with growing confusion. His ship was designed to intimidate entire solar systems. It carried enough firepower to level continents. Against a single mech, this should have been simple, but nothing about these energy signatures made sense. The human weapon was drawing power from sources his instruments could not identify. Worse, it seemed to be manipulating gravitational fields and quantum fluctuations in ways that should have been impossible. "All ships maintain formation," Zeklon ordered his fleet. "Target the human weapon and prepare to fire on my command." 20 Dominion warships moved into attack position, their weapons powered up with the familiar hum of charging energy banks. Against any normal target, such firepower would guarantee total destruction. Yong-Sin was not a normal target. The battle began, when the Dominion fleet opened fire. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced out toward the hybrid mech. In response, Yong-Sin simply disappeared. The mech did not move out of the way. It did not activate shields or armor. It folded space around itself and stepped through dimensions. Appearing instantly behind the Dominion formation, Captain Zeklon's instruments could not track what had happened. One moment the target was in front of them, the next it was behind them. The laws of physics said this was impossible. The smoking wreckage of his rear guard ships said otherwise. Through the neural link, Kang felt Baeko's ancient joy at finally being able to fly free again. The dragon's natural ability to sense and manipulate quantum fields had been enhanced by the mech's computer systems. Together, they could do things that neither could accomplish alone. Yong-Sin moved through three-dimensional space like a creature born to it. It teleported from point to point by folding space-time, appearing wherever it was needed most. The mech's weapons fired continuously without ever running out of power, drawing energy directly from quantum fluctuations and the rotation of nearby stars. But the most terrifying aspect was how perfectly it fought. Every shot hit its target. Every movement was exactly where it needed to be. Through Bayako's senses, Kang could feel the gravitational eddies caused by ship movements, sense the electromagnetic buildup that came before weapons fire, even detect the quantum signatures of targeting systems locking on. The Dominion fleet found itself fighting an enemy that could predict their every move. One by one, the warships found their weapon systems disabled. Precise energy beams cut through. Armor plating to destroy gun batteries without harming the crew inside. Engine systems failed as critical components were surgically removed. Communication arrays went dead as targeting lasers severed exactly the right cables. The dominance itself, pride of the Dominion fleet, lasted longest. Captain Zeklon activated every defensive system his ship possessed. Energy shields, point, defense guns, electronic warfare suites. Nothing worked. Yongsin danced around the massive cruiser like death itself, systematically dismantling its ability to fight. When the ship's weapons finally fell silent, Yongsin appeared directly in front of the bridge. Through the view screen, Captain Zeklon found himself staring into the glowing eyes of something that should not exist. A message came through on all communication frequencies. The voice was human, but underneath it was something deeper and older. Captain Zeklon, your ship is disabled, but your crew lives. You will take a message back to your emperor. Tell him that humanity remembers the old songs. Tell him the dragons are flying again. Tell him that if he wants a war, we will give him one he will never forget. The hybrid mech disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving the Dominion fleet drifting helpless in space. It took 6 hours for rescue ships to arrive and restore power to their engines. Back on New Jeju, Admiral Kang climbed out of the pilot's seat feeling more alive than he had in years. The neural link with Baiko had shown him possibilities he had never imagined. Through the dragon's eyes, he had seen the universe as it really was. Energy and matter dancing together in patterns too beautiful for human words. Dr. Park ran her. Scanners over both the mech and the dragon, documenting everything that had happened. Admiral, the integration is even deeper than before. The battle seems to have strengthened the bond between all three components. Dong-Yun was already working on improvements to the hybrid systems. We learned a lot from that fight. I can make the energy transfer more efficient, improve the quantum resonance patterns. Give me a week and Yongsin will be twice as powerful. But Kang was thinking about bigger things. Through the neural link, he had felt something stirring in the depths of space. Other dragons, sleeping in hidden places, beginning to wake up. The quantum resonance from their battle was spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. This is just the beginning, he said quietly. The Dominion will not ignore what happened here. They will come back with everything they have. Baiko's massive head turned toward him, ancient eyes glowing with something that had been missing for 3 centuries. Purpose. The dragon had waited so long for this moment. Now that it had arrived, he was ready for whatever came next. In the depths of space, the disabled Dominion fleet began its long journey home. They carried with them news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans had created something impossible, something that could challenge the Dominions. Absolute power. The galaxy was about to change forever. News of the New Jeju incident spread through Dominion space faster than the speed of light. In the grand halls of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Vextar paced back and forth on his 4 legs, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic reports that filled the air around him. Captain Zeklon stood at attention, still wearing bandages from his encounter with the human weapon. His report made no sense, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. 20 warships disabled by a single enemy. No casualties, but complete defeat. You tell me, the Emperor's voice grinding like broken glass. That one human in an old mech destroyed an entire battle group? Not destroyed, Your Majesty. Disabled. The weapon seemed designed to defeat us without killing. It was as if the pilot wanted to send a message rather than start a war. The message is clear enough, Admiral Krixvan interrupted. The reptilian warrior stood 3 meters tall, his body enhanced with cybernetic implants that gleamed under the palace lights. The humans have violated the peace treaty. They have built a superweapon. They must be stopped before other species get ideas about challenging our authority. Emperor Vexatar nodded slowly. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries through a simple principle. Make rebellion seem hopeless. Show overwhelming force whenever anyone dared to resist. The human victory at New Jeju threatened that carefully, maintained fear. Prepare the Grand Fleet, the Emperor commanded. I want 50 ships, including the Fist of Empire. If the humans want to play with weapons of war, we will remind them why the Dominion rules the galaxy. Meanwhile, on distant worlds throughout Dominion space, other forces were stirring. Dr. Kim Ji-hoon, a human scientist studying the ruins of Kepler 442, watched in amazement as ancient crystal formations began to glow for the first time in centuries. The quantum resonance from Yongxin was spreading across space at impossible speeds, awakening technology that had been dormant since the dragons disappeared. Deep in crystal caves, where the last void dragons had made their final stand, holographic recordings flickered to life. The messages were in the dragon language, but the translation computers could make sense of most of it. The compact is broken. The exile ends. Let the children of fire and void remember their wings. Dr. Kim sent urgent messages to every human colony he could reach. Something was happening. Something that involved the ancient dragons and the mysterious energy signatures coming from New Jeju. Back on New Jeju, Admiral Kang found himself at the center of events he had never planned. Word of Yongxin's victory had spread through human space like wildfire. Colony after colony was requesting protection from what they now called the Dragon Guard. Retired military officers emerged from civilian life, offering their services. Most surprising of all, representatives from other species began arriving in secret. Races that had suffered under Dominion rule for generations, all wanting to know if the rumors were true. Commander Ri Soyoung of the Human Merchant Marine brought the most startling news. Admiral, we are not alone in this. The Altarian Republic has been building a resistance network for decades. The Silicon Syndicate has been stockpiling weapons in hidden depots. Even some of the Dominion's client species are ready to turn if they think they have a chance. Through the neural link with Baiko, Kong could sense the dragon's ancient memories stirring. The Dominion had not conquered the galaxy through superior technology alone. They had won by convincing every species that resistance was hopeless. They had made the galaxy forget that there were other ways to live. They are afraid, Kang realized. The Dominion is not invincible. They are just very good at making everyone think they are. Dr. Park looked up from her latest analysis of the quantum resonance data. Admiral, I am detecting energy signatures similar to Baiko's appearing throughout the galaxy. Faint, but growing stronger every day. What does that mean? It was Dong Yun who answered, his scarred face grim with understanding. It means the dragons are not as extinct as everyone thought, and they are waking up. The confirmation came 3 weeks later. A merchant ship arriving from the Outer Rim brought impossible news. Dragon sightings. Not one or two, but dozens. Ancient creatures emerging from hidden places where they had slept for centuries. Most were still weak and disoriented, but they were alive. More importantly, some of them were not alone. Human pilots, miners, and colonists who had somehow formed. The same kind of neural bond that connected Kang to Baiko. The quantum resonance was spreading, creating new partnerships between human minds and dragon consciousness. The galaxy was waking up from 3 centuries of fear, but the Dominion was not going to let this awakening continue unchallenged. Admiral Krixvan's grand fleet arrived at the edge of the new Jeju system with enough firepower to crack planets. 50 warships, including the massive dreadnought Fist of Empire, deployed in perfect formation. The Admiral's message was broadcast on all frequencies. Humans of New Jeju, surrender the illegal weapons system immediately or face the consequences of defying Dominion authority. You have 1 hour to comply. In his workshop, Admiral Kang felt the weight of decision on his shoulders. Through the eye neural link, he could sense Baeko's ancient anger stirring for the first time in centuries. The dragon had watched his species choose exile rather than fight. He had endured 300 years of captivity and humiliation. Now, bonded with human determination and advanced technology, he was being threatened again. "Admiral," Dr. Park said quietly, "the colony evacuation is complete. Everyone is in the underground shelters. But those orbital bombardment platforms can crack the planet's crust if they want to." Dongyun checked his equipment one last time and grinned. "Let them try. That oversized lizard up there is about to learn why humans do not stay down when you kick them." Yongxin rose from the hangar like a star being born. Energy wreathed its form in patterns that made reality itself bend and twist. At 12 meters tall, it should have been nothing against a fleet of capital ships. Instead, every Dominion sensor was screaming warnings about energy readings that broke their instruments. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Yongxin moved through 3-dimensional space like a creature, born to the void, teleporting between locations by folding space-time around itself. Its weapons fired continuously without ever running out of power, drawing energy from quantum fluctuations and stellar radiation. But the most remarkable thing was how it seemed to predict every move the Dominion fleet made. Through Baeko's ancient senses and Kang's tactical genius, the hybrid entity could feel gravitational currents caused by ship movements, sense electromagnetic buildups that preceded weapons fire, even detect the quantum signatures of targeting systems. One by one, the Dominion ships found their weapons disabled and their engines offline. They were forced to watch helplessly as something impossible danced between their formations like death incarnate. When the Fist of Empire finally retreated with the remnants of the fleet, they carried a message that would echo through Dominion space. The age of absolute rule was ending. The dragons were flying again, and humanity had remembered how to fight. The hunt was over. Now the real war would begin. The humiliation of Admiral Krixvan's grand fleet sent shockwaves through every corner of Dominion space. For the first time in 3 centuries, a single enemy had defeated an entire battle group without suffering a single casualty. The impossible had become reality, and the galaxy was taking notice. Emperor Vexitar convened an emergency session of his war council in the deepest levels of the Imperial Palace. The greatest military minds from dozens of species gathered around, the holographic display showing the battle footage from New Jeju. They watched in silence as Yongxin danced between capital ships like a force of nature. "Analysis," the Emperor demanded. General Thekmore, a massive crystalline being whose species had served the Dominion for millennia, spoke first. "The weapon shows capabilities that violate known physics, instantaneous movement across space, unlimited energy generation, predictive combat algorithms that border on precognition." "Could we build something similar?" asked Admiral Krixvan, his cybernetic implants still sparking from damage taken in the battle. "No," came the flat response from Chief Scientist Velnara. "Our best estimates suggest this technology is based on principles we do not understand. The energy readings indicate quantum manipulation at a level that should be impossible for any known species." Emperor Vextar's compound eyes focused on the display showing Yongxin's final moments before disappearing. "Then we destroy it before it can multiply. Ready the Imperial Armada. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier the Dominion possesses. This threat ends now. But even as the Emperor mobilized his vast military machine, forces beyond his control were stirring throughout the galaxy. On Kepler 442, the ancient homeworld of the Void Dragons, Dr. Kim Ji-hoon watched crystalline structures that had been dark for centuries suddenly blaze with inner light. The quantum resonance from Yong-Sin was somehow awakening the dragon's ancestral technology. Deep in crystal caves where the last of their kind had made their final stand, holographic messages continued to activate. The translations were becoming clearer as the human computers learned more of the ancient language. The time of hiding ends. The compact with silence is broken. Let those who remember the old songs teach them to new voices. Let the children of distant stars learn to fly. Dr. Kim transmitted his findings to every human colony and research station he could reach. The implications were staggering. The dragons had not simply vanished from the galaxy, they had left behind a network of dormant technology, waiting for the right moment to reactivate. That moment had apparently arrived. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Kang found himself at the center of a phenomenon he had never expected. Word of Yong-Sin's victory had spread beyond the human colonies. Representatives from dozens of species were arriving at New Jeju, all seeking the same thing: hope. The Altarian Republic sent Ambassador Velthara, a graceful being whose crystalline body chimed softly as she spoke. Admiral Kang, my people have suffered under Dominion rule for 2 centuries. We have ships, weapons, trained soldiers. All we lacked was belief that resistance was possible. You have given us that belief. Similar delegations arrived daily. The Silicon Syndicate offered their advanced AI networks. The Kepler Mining Consortium provided industrial capacity and rare materials. Even some of the Dominion's client species sent secret representatives promising to turn their fleets when the moment was right. But the most remarkable arrivals were human pilots who had somehow formed their own bonds with awakening dragons. Commander Yoon Tae-hyung brought news from the Outer Rim colonies that changed everything. Admiral, they are everywhere. Dragons emerging from places we never knew existed. Most are still weak from centuries of hibernation, but some have found human partners. The neural bonds are forming naturally, like the universe wants this to happen. Through his connection with Baiko, Kang could sense what Tae-hyung described. Across the galaxy, the quantum resonance was creating opportunities for humans and dragons to connect. Not every attempt succeeded, but when it did, the results were extraordinary. Dr. Park confirmed what they all suspected. The resonance patterns are accelerating. Each new human-dragon bond strengthens the overall network. We are seeing quantum entanglement on a galactic scale. What does that mean for the war that is coming? Asked Dong-yun as he worked to upgrade Yong-Sin's systems. It means we will not be alone, Kang replied, feeling Baeko's ancient wisdom flowing through the neural link. The dragons remember technologies that predate the Dominion by millions of years. If we can awaken enough of them, we might actually have a chance. But time was running short. Long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements throughout Dominion space. The Emperor was gathering every ship he could find, calling in favors from vassal states and client species. The force being assembled was larger than anything seen since the Titan Wars. Captain Lee Sun-ho of the human destroyer Seoul brought the most troubling intelligence report. Admiral, our spies in Dominion space report fleet movements from every sector. Conservative estimates put their total force at over 3,000 ships, including planet killers and reality-warping superweapons. Against this armada, the Resistance could field perhaps 300 ships, mostly converted civilian vessels and aging military hardware. The mathematics were clear. They would be outnumbered 10-1 by forces with superior technology and unlimited resources. How long do we have? Kang asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3 before they can coordinate the attack. They are calling it Operation Final Authority. The plan is to make an example of us that will keep the galaxy quiet for another 3 centuries. In the depths of his workshop, Admiral Kang stood before Yong Sin and felt the weight of impossible decisions. Through the neural link, Beko's ancient memories showed him visions of the last great war between dragons and the forces of tyranny. That conflict had nearly destroyed the galaxy before the dragons chose exile. Now history was repeating itself, but with a crucial difference. This time, humans and dragons were fighting together. This time, they had allies throughout the galaxy, who were ready to stand up against oppression. "Are you ready for this?" Kang asked the dragons silently through their bond. Beko's response came not in words but in emotions and images, centuries of waiting. The pain of watching his species choose exile rather than see the galaxy burn. The hope that someday, someone would be worthy of the old knowledge. That day had arrived. The dragon was no longer tired and listless. 3 months of bonding with human technology and determination had awakened something in him that had slept for centuries. The power of his species, combined with human innovation and the will to fight for freedom. As reports continued to arrive of dragons awakening throughout the galaxy, Kang realized that they were witnessing something unprecedented, not just a rebellion against the Dominion, but a renaissance. The galaxy was remembering what it had been before fear and oppression became the norm. "Dr. Park," he said, "begin preparation of the quantum resonance amplifier we discussed. If we are going to face the entire Dominion Armada, we will need every advantage we can get." "Admiral, that system is still theoretical. We have no idea if it will work on such a massive scale." Dong-Yun looked up from his work with a grin that split his scarred face. "Then we better find out fast, because something tells me we are about to get the chance to test everything we have learned." In the distance, stars began to dim as massive fleet formations moved through hyperspace toward their final confrontation. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and its outcome would determine whether freedom or tyranny ruled the stars. The storm was rising, and at its center stood a human admiral, an ancient dragon, and a hybrid war machine that had become something the galaxy had never seen before, something legendary. The final battle came not at New Jeju, but in the void between stars near Kepler 442, where ancient crystal formations pulsed with awakening power. Admiral Kang stood in the neural interface chamber of Yongxin, feeling the weight of galactic history pressing down on his shoulders. Emperor Vextar had assembled the largest fleet in Dominion history. Over 3,000 warships stretched across light years of space, a testament to absolute power that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Planet killers and reality-warping weapons moved in perfect formation, ready to end any thought of rebellion forever. Against this overwhelming force, humanity and its allies could field barely 300 ships. Most were converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons and aging military hardware. By every law of warfare, the battle should have lasted minutes, but those laws had not accounted for dragons. Captain Yoon Tae-hyung of the human destroyer Busan watched his instruments with growing amazement. "Admiral, I am reading massive energy buildups from Kepler 442. The crystal formations are reaching critical resonance." Through his bond with Beko, Admiral Kang felt what was happening. The quantum resonance network that had been growing for months was finally reaching completion. Every awakened dragon, every human-dragon bond, every piece of ancient technology that had stirred to life was now connected in a web of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. "My siblings," Beko's ancient voice echoed through the neural link. "My children of fire and void, the time of hiding is ended. Rise and remember who you were born to be." The sky tore open. Reality folded in ways that made Dominion sensors scream and fail. From tears in space-time itself, they emerged. Dozens of void dragons, their crystalline scales blazing with energies that predated the current galaxy. Some rode inside hybrid mechs like Yongxin, piloted by humans who had formed the impossible neural bonds. Others flew free, their bodies adapted to survive in hard vacuum, breathing solar wind and feeding on cosmic radiation. Emperor Vextar watched from his flagship as the impossible unfolded before him. "What are those things?" he demanded of his science officers. "Unknown, Your Majesty. The energy readings are off all scales. They appear to be manipulating fundamental forces of reality itself. But the dragons were not alone. Throughout the Allied fleet, something extraordinary was happening. Ships that had been struggling with outdated technology suddenly found their power systems surging beyond all safety limits. Dragon energy was flowing into human vessels, transforming crude technology into something transcendent. Captain Lee Sun-ho of the Seoul watched in wonder as his destroyer's weapons began operating at efficiency levels that violated physics. "All ships report status. What is happening to our systems?" The responses came back filled with amazement and disbelief. Every human ship in the fleet was being enhanced by dragon energy. Weapons that should have taken minutes to charge were firing continuously. Engines that should have overheated were running at impossible speeds. Shields that should have failed under enemy fire were holding against attacks that could destroy planets. The Altarian Republic's crystalline ships began to resonate with harmonics they had forgotten for millennia. The Silicon Syndicate's AI networks suddenly found themselves connected to quantum processing systems that thought in ways their creators had never imagined. Even the Dominion's client species found their ships responding to energies they did not understand. Weapon systems activated that had been dormant since their ancestors first bent the knee to imperial authority. For the first time in centuries, they remembered what freedom felt like. At the center of it all, Yongsin blazed like a newborn star. Admiral Kang and Baeko had transcended their individual limitations, becoming something that was simultaneously perfectly human and utterly draconic. They moved through the battle like conductors directing a cosmic symphony, each gesture coordinating attacks across light years of space. The battle that followed defied every tactical manual ever written. Void dragons danced between capital ships, their bodies phasing through solid matter while their claws tore holes in space-time itself. Human vessels moved with impossible grace, their crews connected to dragon partners who could sense gravitational currents and quantum fluctuations. When the Dominion deployed their reality-warping weapons, expecting to tear holes in the fabric of space itself, the dragons simply reached out and caught the distortions. They reshaped the tiers in reality into bridges that allowed Allied ships to teleport across the battlefield. When planet killers fired their ultimate weapons, designed to crack worlds and boil away atmospheres, the dragons sang in harmonies that made the weapons forget what they were meant to destroy. Energies that should have brought death instead brought new life, awakening dormant systems and healing old wounds. Emperor Vextar watched his invincible armada crumble before forces he could not comprehend. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found themselves helpless against enemies that moved through dimensions his scientists insisted did not exist. "Fall back!" he ordered desperately. "Regroup at the second battle line!" But there was nowhere to retreat to. The dragons and their human partners were everywhere at once, appearing and disappearing through folded space. The Dominion fleet, despite its massive numerical advantage, found itself fighting an enemy that could be anywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The end came when Yongsin appeared directly in front of the Emperor's flagship. The hybrid mech had grown during the battle, dragon scales and human technology merging so completely that the boundaries between organic and artificial had become meaningless. Through the view screen, Emperor Vexitar found himself staring into eyes that held depths of ancient wisdom and very human determination. When Admiral Kang spoke, his voice was harmonized with Baeko's deeper tones, creating sounds that resonated in dimensions the Dominion ruler could not perceive. "Emperor Vexitar, your reign of fear is over. The galaxy remembers what it was before. You taught it to crawl. There will be no more conquest, no more oppression, no more making species forget their own potential. You have doomed everything, the Emperor snarled. Without Dominion order, there will be chaos, war, extinction. The Dragon Knight regarded the fallen ruler with compassion that surprised everyone, including himself. No, there will be freedom. There will be growth. There will be species learning to fly again instead of groveling in the dirt. As the Emperor was taken into custody, the galaxy began to change immediately. The quantum resonance network that connected dragons and humans across space was triggering something unprecedented. A renaissance of technology and culture as species rediscovered abilities they had suppressed for generations. On 1,000 worlds, dormant technologies awakened. Ancient knowledge that had been hidden or forgotten suddenly became available again. Species that had been client states for centuries remembered their own history and culture. But perhaps most importantly, the bonds between humans and dragons spread to other partnerships. The awakening had shown that consciousness could transcend species barriers, that cooperation could achieve what domination never could. Dr. Park Min-hee, monitoring the quantum network from New Jeju, watched in wonder as the effects rippled outward from the battle site. Admiral, the resonance patterns are stabilizing across the entire galaxy. We are seeing new connections forming between species that have not spoken to each other in centuries. Commander Ri So-young brought reports from the liberated Dominion, worlds. The client species are declaring independence. They are forming new alliances, sharing technology, working together instead of competing for the Dominion's favor. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Kang found himself changed by the experience. The neural bond with Beko had become so complete that he was no longer entirely human, just as the dragon was no longer entirely what he had been. They had become something new together. "What happens now?" asked Dong-yun as they surveyed the transformed battlefield where former enemies were already beginning to cooperate. Through their shared consciousness, Kang and Beko considered the question. The galaxy was free, but freedom brought responsibility. The old order was broken, but something new had to be built in its place. "Now we teach," Kang replied, his voice carrying harmonics that had not existed before the bonding. "We show other species what we have learned. That partnership is stronger than domination. That diversity creates strength instead of weakness. That the galaxy is big enough for everyone to fly." Above them, the crystalline formations on Kepler 442 continued to pulse with gentle light. The dragon homeworld was awakening after centuries of silence, its ancient technology coming online to support the new age that was beginning. The war was over. The age of fear had ended. And throughout the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to dream were learning to reach for the stars again. In the end, the dragon had not been just a relic, and the mech had not been merely retired. Together with human determination and the will to resist oppression, they had become something that tore open the sky itself and let the light back in. Something legendary. The galaxy would never be the same.